We are live on Facebook. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name's Steve Sarin. This is Diana Sandoval. She's the Executive Clinical Director here at Aspen Ridge Recovery. We're doing a Facebook Live experiment for the next 12 weeks. We'll cover some interesting topics, so hopefully you'll come back weekly and join us. This week we decided we wanted to talk about spirituality. It's something that I've struggled with as an atheist. Diana's got a really interesting Christian perspective, and they're surprisingly pretty close to each other. So I thought we'd start off with kind of trying to define it. I couldn't figure out a good definition of this. The Merriam-Webster dictionary definition is four things, and it's all about religion and the clergy, and that can be really off-putting for someone who's not naturally a religious person when you're trying to get sober. So there's a definition that I like. I don't know if it's a definition, it's more of an explanation, but instead of focusing on a higher power that sort of runs the universe, I kind of subscribe to what philosophers call secular spirituality, and it's all about getting in touch with the human spirit, not as much about what I believe or what anyone believes, but rather how I behave and how I show up for other people in the world. What do you have a good definition that works for you?
Well, I do. I have a definition, and the key is, Steve, that it works for me. And I think defining spirituality is a broad process. But the one for me is the breath of life. And what that means is that I have this sort of guiding presence that I choose to live my life by, right? And I think about how life is sustained when the body begins to shut down and people transition into whatever someone's belief system is. They take their last breath. And to me, spirituality is the breath of life. And when that breath transitions, then that breath of life goes to the next life. And so that's kind of how I define it. Like, we have a spirit, we have a soul, which is our mind, emotion, and will. And then we have a body, and we want to live completely with all three of those things having presence. That's what makes us exist.
And I think the key thing what you said there is that it works for you, and that it doesn't have to be, we don't have to have the same definition of spirituality. We don't have to believe the same things as long as it works for the person.
That's right.
So from an atheist perspective, for those of you who probably don't know anything about me, I'm somewhat of a devout evangelical atheist, if you will. So when I first tried to get sober, this was exceedingly difficult, and it's a big part of recovery, and I just could not grasp this. And I'm a part of a 12-step program, and this is an integral part, living a spiritual life, part of the steps, and this was just responsible for, the lack of me understanding was responsible for so many relapses and me bailing on this. I don't get this. This is religious. I'm out. And it's really not. And once I was finally able to kind of put my ego and my know-it-all nature aside for a few minutes and listen to what people say at meetings, and you can pick and choose little bits that make sense to you from everyone.
That's right.
And that's what I loved about it. I could just kind of make it up for myself. But there are a couple things I think are somewhat overlap with our Christian and atheist definitions of spirituality. And what's I think is most important is honesty and integrity. I think those are absolutely critical if you're going to lead somewhat of a spiritual life.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think part of it is, to be spiritual is to have some definition of a moral fiber. And so honesty, integrity, those are moral characteristics, right? It's the ability to live from a place really at the core that is do no harm, and still have accountability. I mean, spirituality does require discipline, and it is a distinctly different practice than, as you said earlier, religion. Religion is how we choose to express our spiritual nature. That's the definition of religion, and I don't particularly drive by religious practice. I like many different elements of many different religions, but my spirituality is very clearly defined for me. My spirituality, because I am Christian, which is not a religion. Christian is to be a follower of Jesus Christ, and I follow Jesus Christ. And you could be a Catholic Christian, you could be a Protestant Christian.
I'm supposed to be one of those.
There you
Catholic
go,
ones.
right? Yeah, like we all get assignments, you know. But Christianity sometimes gets lumped into this concept of religion, and that's really not what it is. I choose to follow Jesus Christ, and I believe in who, by definition, he is as an entity, a spiritual entity. And that's sort of my moral fiber. That's the pathway to the direction in how I choose to live. There are some religious practices that I'm like, that doesn't resonate with me.
The ashes on your head.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Me
You know,
neither.
yeah, I don't follow. I don't subscribe to that. But I do like corporate worship. I do like getting together with other people that believe similar to the way that I believe, and then just wailing, you know, and just really being excited about this power and presence within me that gives me life, celebrating life, and through the teachings of Jesus Christ and who he is.
I've always been fascinated by what happens in churches during a mass or a sermon. I remember when I was first getting sober by the Sober Living House, I would always pass this church, and they had a big rainbow flag outside. So I was like, okay, that seemed like a cool church.
Yeah.
And I would debate every time I drove by the Target and think, I'm gonna go there on a Sunday and just like as a sociological experiment, just watch these people and see what they're getting out of it. I just never understood it, and I'm generally curious and fascinated by things I don't understand, and it's one of those things that's not quantifiable, not even qualifiable. It's just such an abstract, personal thing for these people, and it's always been. I never went, but
really,
I keep saying I should go.
Still go, yeah. I think curiosity is the key, right? Like nobody wants to have anything shoved in their face saying either do this or you're wrong. And quite frankly, that's not a spiritual practice, right?
I would agree.
Yeah, so it's not about like having these legalistic, rigid boundaries about you either show up in the world the way I do or there's something inherently wrong with you. This is really about saying, I want to be open and explore, and I want to seek what's truth. And I talk a lot about the difference between something being true and truth. And I think there's a distinct difference between those things, and it's a spiritual difference. Right? And something could be true, like you and I are doing Facebook Live, and who knows how many people we're sharing this conversation with, which is wonderful. And it's true that right now in the moment that's happening. And then we'll end this conversation, but if we get a phone call from somebody that we don't want to talk to, we might say, oh, gee, can't talk, I'm in a Facebook Live thing. Well, it's not true anymore. So if it's true, it can change. But the ultimate truth with that TH ending, that's a non-negotiable. And I think spiritual practice has truth to it. The core and the thread and the depth of what it means to be spiritually aware. I think there's truth in that. And that's what makes it distinctly different from religion.
Truth and honesty. And another part of it for me is just, helping others and paying it forward. Being of service. I mean, whether it's something silly like holding the door open for someone with groceries, it's much easier to do all those little itty-bitty things, that you don't think about and incorporate that into your daily life. There's one thing I've noticed that if you really want to make someone's day and put zero effort into it whatsoever, when you're in line at Starbucks or Ozo or your coffee shop down the street, buy the person behind you's coffee.
That's right.
I mean, ask how much it is first so you don't get caught buying like someone's whole office a bunch of lattes. But if it's, $8, what's $8 to you? And that person behind you, I've watched in the rearview mirror, and they're like blown away by such an easy act of kindness. And I think, if everyone just did a little thing like that every once in a while, it would kind of, especially in such a polarized, divided time in America, these little one-on-one acts could kind of help restore people's, faith in each other. I don't care about the politics of the person behind me at Starbucks. I kind of do, but not in that moment. I know.
You're not going to go knock on their window and say, what party do you support? Because either you get a free coffee or you don't. Right?
If you voted for this person, no coffee for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, nah, you're off the list. Next. But you know what? To your point, it doesn't matter the definition that we use. Look at the intersection there. I think spirituality is rooted in service.
Absolutely.
I think that it's rooted in kindness. I think that it's rooted in a deep-seated value of humanity. Really. I mean, that's a spiritual act to appreciate human life, right? Yeah, and respect. I mean, if you think about what we've listed, honesty, integrity, service, kindness, those are all characteristics that become part of a tapestry of what's our moral fiber. And they're seated in spiritual concepts. Spirituality is being kind. I mean, if we really want to get deep into the topic, and I don't know how broad we want to go, but quite frankly, I am of the belief that there's a light spiritual commitment and there's a darker spiritual commitment. I mean, there are some practices that really do lend itself to a little bit sort of darker side of spirituality. And that's true of like life existence. There's yin and yang, right? There's good and bad. There's east and west, north and south, light and dark. So if there's one, there has to be another. And I think it's just important that we acknowledge spirituality all encompassing. And then again, it's choose if you're going to live spiritually in light or live spiritually with a little bit darker veil. But it is a choice. There's an option.
And I think it all boils down to, it sounds cliche because it is the golden rule, and, just trying to leave the world a better place than I found it. That's, if you were to boil it down to one sentence, that's the definition of it for me. It's just, when I take that last breath, I want to think, okay, what I did helped other people, and this is a better place than when I found it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, you know what? At the very baseline, if people lived with a life mission like that, it would drive everything else. Do good, and then leave something better than what you found. I mean, that's a core concept. And I think too, for me, it is about grace, and it is about loving people. I don't like everyone.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I just don't. And everyone doesn't like me. I still ponder that. But the reality is that, everybody doesn't. But I can love. And when you love, you really do it from a place of understanding that I don't have to like you and you don't have to like me. But your value is equal to mine. And to me, that's a love exchange. It's an equitable investment in value. And that I can do. I don't have to put myself above or below anyone, nor would I want anyone to be above or below me.
Exactly. I can agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about is we've talked a bit about definitions and what it actually means, but why is it important for recovery specifically? Yeah. It's a part of the 12-step program. Some of the other programs that aren't 12-step based, it all comes back to kind of this concept in varying definitions and degrees. Yeah. I mean, I think, as addicts, I'm in recovery, we were horrible liars, and we used people so much. And I think just having this constant reminder to do better than we were, and think about it consciously throughout the day, because it's really easy to slip back into that old mindset because those hardwired behaviors are still there. It takes a long time to retrain them. What are your thoughts on why spirituality is important if you want to quit drugs and alcohol?
Well, to be honest, in recovery specifically, I think that it's because we weren't. I mean, now let's be real, some people are, just because fetal alcohol syndrome is a real thing. But in general, let's talk about general context, people aren't born addicted. The majority of people are not born addicted. And when I think about recovery, I think about the opportunity to return to the purest form of ourselves. And so it's like we're born in this pure condition, and life happens to us from like day one, and it has impact. And at some point, the cumulative residue of life's impact can become so overwhelming that we find ways to negotiate or navigate around it. And I love the term recovery, not just as it relates to stop drinking and drugging, but as it relates to, if I have surgery, I take a period to recover, to restore myself to my original state. And I think that's what happens spiritually and emotionally, soulfully, and physically, is that recovery is the process of restoration. And I think spirituality is a significant part of that. We won't recover and restore if we leave a piece of our existence neglected, right? We work out for our bodies, we eat for our bodies, we do therapy, we go to treatment, we learn, we build our brain, we do all these things, but if we neglect the breath of life, what would the quality of life be? And if we give space to the breath of life, what would the quality of life be? It's really about being a whole person.
Yeah, recovery it's never ending. It's not, oh, I'm recovered. I can go back to how I was and I'm cured. It's constant work to be a better person and sort of find meaning in this, new way of life. I mean, I'm a 12-stepper. It's not for everyone. There are other routes to recovery, but did being a member of one of those communities help me quit drinking? Sure, a little bit, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is to develop a new way of living, an honest, spiritually based, in this sense of the word, in my sense of the word, spirituality, and moving forward each day with those new values, new principles, and new beliefs. They're not always top of mind, but I try and keep them close. Yeah. So otherwise, like I said, those old habits, it's easy to tell a quick lie like, no, I can't talk to you right now. I'm doing a Facebook Live. And you have to consciously catch yourself because you really don't want to talk to this person. And if you're going to live an honest, spiritually based life, I think, that's the base of it.
Yeah, it's like a conscience check, right?
Absolutely.
It's that check and balance for ourselves, because at the end of the day, which is worse? Oh, I lied about being in a Facebook Live and I don't want to talk to you? Or I lied about, I didn't take the money out of your wallet to go get drugs. Like, a lie is a lie. I don't know. Does one have greater impact than the other? Not on the person who feels betrayed by a dishonest response. I mean, betrayal is betrayal, no matter what. And so I do think spirituality it's the grounding post for the moral conscience. And I also think it's grace. Like, just because we're in recovery and just because we have a spiritual practice and spiritual awareness and we're spiritually alive, right? And we're dedicated to living a good life. Brother, I can go to the market and get cranky with the clerk. I do it. You know what I mean? Like, I am really self-identified as a truly committed Christian woman. Like, I really care about people, and I care about Christ, and I care about my soul and the souls of others, and all of those things are true. But let me tell you, when I get cranky, the first thing my son says to me is like, did you eat? Because, I'm hangry, I mean, these things come out. And I think spirituality is that window of grace for human iniquity. That we don't lose value for human life, but we also understand that by the very nature of our human existence, we can be unpredictable creatures sometimes. We can have good days and bad days, and it doesn't, spirituality doesn't keep us always on the straight line, because what does a flat line mean? Like, we die, right? We are in flux all the time, and spirituality is kind of a nice check and balance for, am I going too high or going too low? Am I being kind? Am I giving grace because I need grace? Am I showing up in the world that leaves it better than I found it? Yeah, I think so.
Well, I don't think I can top that closing, so I think we'll end it here. When Diane and I get together, we're gonna call it Recovery in 40, because we just can't stop talking with one another. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll repost this to Instagram. It is connected to this Facebook account, so give us a follow there. We'll have our next episode next week. And if you or someone you know needs help with addiction, mental health, or trauma, you can visit aspenridgerecovery.com and check out our programs. We accept most major insurance, or you can give us a call and talk to one of our client advocates at 855-281-5588. Thank you very much for being with us. Diana, thank you much for taking time out of your busy day to talk about spirituality with me.
I always love our chats. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.